Hello again. Here's a little bit more from A Moment of Faith. This is chapter 3, one of the earliest chapters where we meet the protagonist of the story. His name is Christian Cardale. He's a bit of a loner and has found this seemingly unknown and abandoned church in the middle of Copenhagen that he's dying to have a look inside. So this is him going on a bit of out of his way. This is chapter 3 of A Moment of Faith. Copenhagen now. This was so exciting. I was on an adventure. The sun hung low as I walked along Pippling a certain lake 2 days later. The many rows of light bulbs lining the roof of Søpavillon, the sea pavilion, were glowing in the distance. A constantly pleasant sight, like a huge all-year Christmas decoration, reflecting off the water, visible from miles away. It was a Wednesday evening. A few hundred meters in front of me towered the Catholic Apostolic Church of Copenhagen on the corner of Søgade. I could not help but wonder how remarkable it was that a church allegedly not in use was placed right here. You could hardly find a more attractive location in all of Copenhagen. Less than 5 minutes from City Hall, with a grand view of the artificial yet beautiful lakes, once built as part of the surrounding city defense system. I might have seen too many American films, as my imagination had already staged the next scenario. It was not as much my expectation as it was my hope to find a church which I knew was immaculately preserved on the outside, but inside would be neglected and all but deserted. I imagined entering a large, dark, dusty church space, a room once majestic, but after 70 years of neglect would look like an oubliette of treasures, with ancient biblical scriptures and books of psalms scattered and forgotten on the floor under a layer of dust. Beams of light penetrating the tall, narrow windows, cutting through the dusty air like shafts of lost enlightenment. An air so dry it would stick to the back of the throat at every inhalation. Faded paintings of saints on the walls, covered in cobwebs, and maybe a single person sitting on the only bench left upright in the grand hall. A lonely man as old as the church itself, decayed and fossilized in a position of prayer, with his head bent over a Bible resting in his pale, rigid hands. What if I found something like that in the middle of Copenhagen that no one even knew existed? The tiny traffic light man was provokingly red, but there it was, right behind him. I could see the light through the windows from the inside. At least there was a sign of life in there. So far, so good. The side of the church paralleled the footway of Søgade. The main entrance was around the corner. I rounded the building to reach the massive wooden double doors, and grabbed the large iron handle and pushed them down. The door did not budge. Strange. You could not accuse them of being overly proactive in recruiting new members for the congregation. This much was certain. Usually public churches keep their front doors open so the public wandering by can see that a service is about to start and all are welcome. Above the doors was an enormous stained glass window comprising many smaller pieces with lead casings connecting the shards of glass. There was an intricate shape to the rosetta. From the outside, it looked dark, impenetrable to light. I continued to the far corner. There was another door. The design implied this door too belonged to the church, although it did not appear to lead into the church. There was a small letterbox built into the door, and above it a discreet metal sign darkened by the wear and tear of the ages, engraved with the words Catholic Apostolic Church. The name was impossible to read unless you were really looking for it. I gave it a push. It yielded and opened. My assumption that it did not lead into the church was correct. I was in a kind of alleyway, the church on the one side and a brick wall on the other. The wall probably just served to separate the grounds from the neighboring block of flats. I felt like I was breaking and entering, walking into someone's home without permission. The sensation was exactly what St. Augustine described when, as a boy, for inexplicable reasons, he had broken into his neighbor's garden and stolen some pears. A guilt caused by an act of evil without reason. He knew it was wrong, but did it anyway. That was how I felt. I was sneaking into a church, unannounced and unwelcome, to steal their secrets. It could not get any more sinful than this. On my left was another door leading into the church. The insignificant look of this door led me to believe it would once have held the sign, Staff Entrance. I pushed the handle gently. The door opened. A small hallway with a low ceiling and utterly monotonous white-painted walls was before me. It was some kind of tiny hall. I held my breath. Not a sound was heard from inside the church. I walked slowly down the hallway and approached the main entrance. A small staircase on the right seemed to lead up to the tower. Just before I reached the double doors, a small door on my right was suddenly open. What I saw through the open door was not something I could have ever neither expected nor imagined. To be continued. Have a lovely day.